on the spiritual realms. And I don't know, I hope you find this interesting. I do. I find it fascinating. There is an entire world of spiritual beings out there that we hardly ever even think about or acknowledge, but they're there. And they influence us. They try to influence our lives. In fact, you can just think about it. God is a spiritual being, and he's trying to influence your life. And Satan is a spiritual being. Just on the surface, just right there, you can see it. God is a spiritual being who's trying to influence your life, and Satan is a spiritual being who's trying to influence your life. And what tool does God use to influence you? His Word, that's right. And what tool does Satan use to influence you? Yeah. Yeah, he uses, he twists the Word, but basically, as John put it, the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. And he'll twist the Word to try and justify those lusts. But the devil, in other words, the devil is appealing to your flesh. What makes you feel good? What boosts your ego? What looks good to you? That's what the devil's appealing to. And God's appealing to your spirit, the inner man. And your spirit, really, that's your brain, that's your mind. That's where you do your thinking. So God appeals to the mind, to the spirit, and the devil appeals to the flesh, and so you have this battle. We're like two people in a manner of speaking. We're not really two people, but we're like two people. I have fleshly inclinations that say do this, and then I have a mind or a spirit that says no, that's not right. And so you have this battle. And the question is, who's going to win? And we cast the deciding vote. We decide whether we're going to follow the flesh or follow the spirit. But anyway, there's this unseen world, this spiritual world. And just to sort of illustrate that, in the last couple of years we had this coronavirus, COVID-19. Can't see that, but it's there. We've known people who've had it. Some of us have had it. We've known people who've died from it. Can't see that virus. Can't see a cold virus. Can't see a flu virus. But they're there. They exist. They're real. They're microscopic. There's a microscopic world that we can't see with the human eye, and there's a spiritual world that we can't see with the human eye. And just to kind of kick this off, I want you to go, I know they don't have this passage on your notes, but turn to 2 Kings chapter 6 for just a second. I think I mentioned this last week, and it's worth reading and looking at here tonight to sort of kick off the study. 2 Kings 6, and we'll start here in just a minute with verse 11. Six 11. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing. And he called his servants and he said, Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who's in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, Go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, Surely he's in Dothan. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. So the king of Syria sends this army to get Elisha. So he's outnumbered. An army come get Elisha. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding that city with horses and chariots. And his servant said, Alas, my master, what shall we do? We're surrounded. The army has come to get us. And they are great, and they're powerful, and they're vast. And he answered, verse 16, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So it was when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, Strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Now think about that. They could not see those horses and chariots of fire, but they were there. They were there, and there was more of them than there was of the Syrian army. And that's that spiritual realm. Angelic beings in the background. Angelic beings working to help God's people. And that's the kind of thing we're going to be studying about, this spiritual realm that we don't even think about half the time. We put it out of our minds, but it's there and it's real. Now there's another passage that we might look at here to kind of to start this off. Daniel 10. Daniel had a vision of an angel. There was an angel who came to speak to him. And he reveals some interesting things. It's kind of a lengthy reading. We're going to go from about verse 4, maybe down to verse 14. So it's kind of long, but it's worth looking at. Daniel 10, verse 4. Now on the 24th day of the first month, I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris. I lifted my eyes, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with the gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. That sound like a human being to you? That's not a human being. What do you think that is? That's an angel of some kind, yeah. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but great terror fell upon them that they fled to hide themselves. I was left alone when I saw this great vision, and no strength remained in me, for my vigor was turned to frailty within me, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. And suddenly a hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for I have been sent to you. And while he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. So this angel had been sent to Daniel. He said to me, verse 12, Do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. So Daniel prayed, God sent an angel, okay? And look at this, verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me. So here's this angel trying to make a journey to see Daniel, and he's hindered. And he's hindered by another angel. An angel, he calls him the prince of the kingdom of Persia. And he withstood me 21 days, so he delayed me 21 days. I was trying to get to you, and this guy stood in the way. I had to fight him for 21 days. And behold, Michael, well, who's Michael? We know that. We know his name, don't we? He's the archangel, that's right. Michael, one of the chief princes. So here's another angel. A chief prince, archangel means a chief angel or a ruling angel. One of the chief princes came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to make you understand what will happen in your people and to your people in the latter days, for the vision refers to many days yet to come. So this angel is sent, and he's hindered by another angel. And the point I'm making, this is the kind of stuff going on in the background. Daniel would have not known this if he had not come and told him. Daniel would have not had a clue. How much of this stuff's going on today? I would reckon there's quite a bit of it. We got no way of knowing for sure. But I'm trying to suggest to you that yes, there's a spiritual realm. Yes, there are spiritual beings. Yes, they're active. Yes, they're trying to influence you. God and his angels are trying to influence you for good. The devil and his angels are trying to influence you for evil. And we cast the deciding vote. Am I going to follow God or the devil? But think not for a second that these beings don't exist. They do exist. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them try to influence us for evil. So there is a spiritual realm out there. And there are places, and if you look at your outline here, we're going to talk about Hades. That'll be the first study. And by the way, when you look at your notes here, you see those dark numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down through there. We'll have a new sheet, or maybe 2 or 3 sheets for each one of those. This is the way I usually do my classes, and the elders were gracious enough to let me try that here, and we'll see how it goes. But that's the way I've done them for years. I don't usually use books normally. I usually use stuff like this. But each one of those will be a separate lesson as we go through there. This lesson here is just an introduction. This is just giving you a bird's eye view of where we're going. Okay, that's what this lesson is. And then we'll dig down into each one of these specifically, and we'll get into the details. And we'll talk about Hades, and I'm just going to go through it first and then come back. We'll talk about Hades. That's a spiritual place. That's a spiritual realm out there. We'll talk about heaven. That's a spiritual place. And we'll talk about hell. That's a spirit. They're real places. Never seen them. Have you? I've never seen them. But they exist, and they're out there somewhere. We'll study about God, a spiritual being. Never seen God, but I believe he exists. He's out there, and he's trying to influence me for good. We'll have a study about angels. And we just read a couple of passages that mentioned angels, the army and the chariots of fire, and the angel that came to Daniel, and the prince of Persia, and Michael, the chief prince. We just read about some of those spiritual beings. We'll study a lot about angels. There's a lot of mythology about angels. And we'll try and separate fact from fiction. What I want to do, our knowledge of the spiritual realm is limited, and the only thing we can know about it is what's here. So I'm going to stick to this, okay? We're not going to speculate. Well, I think, I have a personal guardian angel. We're not going to be speculating. We're not doing that. We're going to stick with what the Scripture says. We're going to, what does it say? What does it tell us? Stick with that. But I think there's a lot of information there, more than we realize. So we'll talk about angels. And when you get into that angelic realm, there are angels, there are archangels, there are cherubim, there are seraphim. There are 24 living creatures around the throne. We learned that in the book of Revelation. 4 living creatures and 24 elders around the throne. I said that wrong. 4 living creatures, 24 elders around the throne. There are angels of nations. There are angels over the righteous, and there are angels over the church. The angels of the 7 churches, for example, in the book of Revelation. Then we'll talk about Satan a little while. We did that a little bit a couple of weeks back when we were studying that book about before Abraham was. And we'll talk a little bit more about Satan, and then we're going to talk about the demons. And again, spiritual beings. They exist. There are demons. I don't believe demons can possess us today, but I do believe they exist, and I do believe they try to wield influence upon us. So this is the bird's eye view of where we're headed. Now let's just kind of look at each one of these. And right now, like I said, we're just introducing. And we're going to dig into this, so if you got questions, you can go ahead and ask them, but I may tell you to hang on and we'll come back to it later, because some of this stuff will be dealt with in each of these lessons. But the first lesson we're going to have after we finish this introduction is Hades. Can anybody tell me what Hades is?